What's up? Good morning, Game Changers.
Good morning.
Ready for a great day today. Hopefully you guys are excited that it's Wednesday. And just what a great day. You know what? What a great day to be alive. What a great day to come into work. What a great day all around the board. And man, I just want to thank God for keeping his hand over the Tampa Bay area. And with regards to Elsa. And let me tell you something, man. It almost just seemed like a normal rainy night. It helped me sleep.
It was a great lullaby.
It was. So we're going to dive into the only negative part is Starbucks opened later. And so my coffee will be coming in just a few minutes, but it's on its way. But it was a little bit later. Here it is. I see it through the silhouette of the glass.
I was waiting on Diana to take a Dunkin' shot.
I have my Dunkin' this morning on time, just saying.
Dunkin' was open because all they had to do was go out back and grab the hose. And
no, actually, the Dunkin' workers aren't afraid to work even in storms.
Oh, come on now. What if
Just
Starbucks
saying.
workers are watching?
I'm sorry, Starbucks workers. It's your management that needs a little bit of training.
Oh, man. I wasn't going there. But, hey, got my coffee now. Sam's in the house. Mike's in the house. Ez. We got Matthias, Diana, myself. Ashton's out today. And Friday, which is really cool, a couple of announcements just before we jump in. My son and his girlfriend, Austin and Genesis, will be co-hosting with me here on Friday. And so excited about that as well. And so just some really cool stuff. They'll be wrapping up the series that we're talking about, grinding and grace and all that good stuff. So against the grind, we're talking about that for the third day. Now, let me just say this. Faith, if you haven't read it yet or haven't started it, The Faith Factor is out. It came out. We announced the 5th because we were told by YouVersion that it was going to be dropped on the 5th, but it actually came out on the 6th, which was yesterday morning. And so if you hadn't had a chance, we posted it, and we'll go post it again in the feed here, but just check it out. It's called The Faith Factor. I think it'll bless you. It was a really, really one of my favorite ones. I went back and personally, we have a content right here, but I personally made some edits on every page and we released it. And just really something that spoke to my heart. We did 2 full weeks, maybe even a little longer on the podcast last month to write that. And so that, and then also Faith Gear will be here officially today. It comes today. And then so we'll be rocking some of that on the podcast tomorrow. And so let's jump into Against the Grain. We've been talking about grinding. We've been talking about the proper way to view this. How do we operate, at full level, and how do we operate, going all in? Because the Bible clearly does talk about, it talks about working. It says, it clearly says, how about this? The Bible gets so specific on it. It says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. That's pretty straight right there. If a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. I'm going to say something just, again, we're not here to talk about culture and all of that kind of stuff that's going on. But something we heard through somebody we're connected to, and I had heard it last night. I think my wife had heard it a couple of weeks ago, but we just discussed it this morning and found out we both kind of heard about it, that this person is, and I know you guys, this sounds really cool. I promise you the company's making out in it, okay? So before I say this, the company is making out. They pre-arranged this to benefit themselves. So my point is not the incentive or what seemingly is an incentive. And this goes right along with what we're talking about. Because if we're going to talk about not grinding, but really coming under God's grace and working unto him, then we have to talk about the other side of things, which is to not be lazy or to not be a sluggard, right? And to not have zero ambition at all, because I don't think that God likes that either. And something this company did, this is where it's getting to. It's getting to the place where they said, if you work a full 40-hour shift, then you're going to make $1 extra an hour. So it's coming down to, in some places, they're so desperate because they don't understand what we're talking about here today. And as a non-believer, you wouldn't understand it, that I'm having to incentivize you to just do your job. Now, the company figured that out, made it, and it might be a pretty good move inside the world system. But it just makes me sad. It makes my heart sad, right? And it just so let's dive into this. Proverbs in 16:9 says, "A man's heart devises his way, but the Lord directs his steps." And in Psalms 24 it says, "Grant thee according to thine own heart, and fulfill all thy counsel." Planning, and then this is planning is one of the best tools. that we would have at our disposal when it comes to the daily grind, right? And we're using that word loosely because we don't like the grind. The definition of grind, again, is going to leave you in dust and powder. So you have to set time aside for yourself to think what you need to accomplish. And it's important to take it, one day at a time and have a game plan. All of those things are biblical. Habakkuk talks about writing things down. So there's like this divide between what should I do? Should I go after it in my own strength? The world's so full of ambition and chasing their tail around that, that they miss the part that says to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness and all these other things to be added unto you. But then you have on this side, you have the church a lot of times where they're hey, God's going to make a way. It seems like sometimes that they forget the part that they have to put in. And so, I don't know about goal setting the way I've always been trained. I begin to understand that, we're created for formation, not goal setting. Let me explain this. In general, goals are usually about a finish line, something you can reach for and then be done once you accomplish it. Have you ever, and here's the thing, you go, well, Dave, what's wrong with the goal? And I'm not dogging out goals. What I'm trying to say is, how have they worked for you overall? Is it really a goal when you don't hit it and then you keep not hitting it? But it feels better when you put it back out there again. It sounds like grace to me. But let's look at this. So something you can reach for, right, as a goal, and then when you hit the finish line, you're done with it once you accomplish it. It's about doing something. Formations, on the other hand, aren't about doing something, but listen, it's about being someone. So rather than I want to accomplish this, sometimes that works for you. It's like, I want to become this person. I want to become this. I want to do something. I want to become someone, right? I think if we do this, it's usually about an activity. One of them is, and one is about identity. We've been talking about identity last week. So one is about activity and one is about identity. Have you ever had activity that didn't get you anywhere? Have you ever done something that, I'm thinking real quick, and I want you guys to didn't comment, but let me just try to set it up. Like a mouse. You guys have heard me say this on the podcast before. A couple of years ago, I got this word picture when I was studying for, I don't know if it was a sermon or something I was speaking to some business people on, but if you get an aquarium and you take a mouse and you put the mouse in the aquarium, right? And you put, or a hamster or what have you, and you put the wheel in there and you put a piece of cheese, you don't have to put a piece of cheese, but you put a piece of cheese on the outside of the glass and the hamster gets on the wheel, the mouse gets on the wheel. What does he do?
Runs.
He just runs. And it amazes me that he's moving. He's active. He's running. And he might be running, even though you don't have to have the cheese in there. Let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, the cheese is what he's after. So he's just going at it, man, running, right? But he doesn't get anywhere. And no matter how hard he runs, he's not going to get to what?
The cheese.
The cheese. So it's difficult, but impossible. So now you take same mouse, you put him in a maze. How many know, I've never been in a maze. Have you ever been in a maze? I've never been in a maze.
Yeah, I have.
You have? Okay, so they're cool on TV, on the movies, right? They look challenging.
I'm good, bro. I don't.
But they look challenging.
I'm good.
I'm claustrophobic.
No, bro, I don't like that.
I saw the Harry Potter maze when it closed up on
That's
them.
what I'm saying, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe corn because you can just run through it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
It's all the mazes I've ever been in were corn mazes.
So you take, before you guys get off on maze, before you take the same mouse, you put him in a maze, and you put that mouse in a maze, you put him in the starting line, and you put the cheese at the finish line. Even though it's challenging, right, in its activity, it goes into the mouse's identity, really. In the mouse will find the cheese. There's a possibility of it. So my question is, have you ever done an activity, you were active, but it didn't get you anywhere?
I've definitely had that happen in my life. I've served in different areas, whether it was at a business or volunteering, and it was never actually fulfilling to me. I was just doing it because I wanted to serve versus serving for the right reason. Mm-hmm. It was one of those, somebody asked me and I was almost like, I don't like to use the word obligated, but I almost felt obligated to serve, but it was never fulfilling to me. It was more frustrating than anything.
Yeah. And it goes along with what we were talking about with the paying the extra dollar. If businesses have to do what they have to do, and you can't blame them when there's no solution that's provided to them and they don't really know where to go. The reality is, if you look at it from the grace standpoint rather than the grind standpoint, you'll find, here's the thing, you look at it from the grace standpoint rather than the grind standpoint, find someone who's there that does it because they want to do it, not because they have to do it.
Right.
And that's the whole key. What do you think? Matisse is getting you on social media, by the way. Not paying
I'm
attention.
so sorry. I had workers show up at my house. I didn't realize they were going to be there today. I think that I think there's been many things that in life that I felt like I was on an exercise bike. Because if you sit on an exercise bike, you're accomplishing something and you're doing cardio or you're working, but are you really getting anywhere? No. So I think life, you have those seasons where you're just kind of pedaling, and you convince yourself that since you're moving, because you're moving, that you're accomplishing things, but you're really just spinning your wheels. You're not really moving forward or moving in any direction. So I think that it's important that when you're in those seasons that you recognize those very quickly, because, if you're not moving anywhere, you usually are stagnant. To touch on what Mike was talking about, I think even in my own life, if anybody knows anything about Enneagrams and stuff like that, I'm a 2. And so my personality will be, if you give me a cause, I'm going to serve it till it kills me. And so I found myself, especially as my kids were younger and I was full-time mom, full-time mom, full-time worker. I was going to say part-time worker, but I shouldn't say that because it was still full-time. But I found myself exhausted and stretched in so many ways. And it really had to come to a point where I realized that it was okay to say no. Because you feel like you're letting people down, especially if it's in areas of serving in your business, your workplace, people, family, church, whatever that is. I came to a point where I realized that I can only serve in those areas healthy. Being healthy is if I first took care of things within myself, because my personality will be I'll do without, or I won't take care of myself at the expense of serving and taking care of others. And I talk about that a lot with our daughter Ashton, because she had a really hard time, especially like her last years of high school and stuff like that, and serving. She was in high school and she was serving in different ministry capacities, that it was okay to say, I can't do this, I can do this, and prioritize. So I think really what's important is to you have to prioritize. I think the first thing for me personally is you have to prioritize what's important in life and what is a non-negotiable, like I have to do this. And then some of the other things, like fitting the things that are okay if you can't get to them, but there are some non-negotiables in your life. So I think that's the target, is finding your non-negotiables that are, no matter what, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and if not, you grind out, and that's what we're talking about. If not, what good are you? Again, with the exception of coffee, beautiful coffee, right? Listen, you grind it to get the best out of it, but at the same time, you're consuming it. It's never going to be the same again. So God didn't make you to be consumed. He didn't make you to be ground, to be used up. He designed you. So it goes back to the goals. The goals are linear and they resemble like a straight line, where formations look more like a circle. So I think to be ground out, it's more of a straight line philosophy where, you're used up at the end of the day. I've come home, and even in recent seasons, because I don't have this all right yet, you understand, but come home used up. If what you do uses you up, then you're doing it wrong. And it's okay to look at that, not be like, overwhelmed by it, but realize that, hey, I need to make some shifts and some changes, and something is off where, you're being ground and you're being used up rather than repurposed and replenished. So let me give you an example where goals are a straight line, formations look more like a circle. So here's the thing with the circle: you're constantly coming back to the same place, seeking renewal and refreshment in a particular practice, in a particular area. So one is about a result and the other is about a process. So when you get tired of, because here's the thing with results are great when you hit them, and when you don't, they set you back. So that's part of the grind. And one is about a process. And a process, if you work the process won't fail you. The process won't fail you. Matter of fact, process, there's no such thing as real time management or managing your time. It's more about what am I going to allow in my time, and what am I going to cut out of my time? Because you only have X amount of time. What are you going to prioritize? What needs your time? What has to have your time? What about your time must you give it? And so the process will help with that. And I think that is where we can really look into this whole, it really starts there with the whole grinding, because, we look at, when you get your heart right, because, and I know Diana wants to comment, when you get your heart right, you got ambition, and then you have this selfish ambition and this God-given ambition, this desire and this drive to, as a vision. God places it in your heart. He's the author and the finisher of your faith. He wrote it in your heart. It's his fault. But you can take the world's version and cloud it up and get ambitious and get selfishly ambitious. And that leads to being ground out, where the godly authoring, where he puts it in your heart and lights it on fire, which is what every every person in the Bible, you read about what they had happen to him. David walked up to the place where he was going to fight Goliath, and he said, is there not a cause? Is there not a reason that I'm feeling like I want to step out here and knock this giant down? And so the process, though, is what really it's all about. Because once you get that ambition or that vision in check, then what? If you leave it up to just goals, like the world tells you to do, and just goals, then you're going to keep coming back to, did I hit that result? Did I get the result I want? Did I get that return? I didn't have a good day because I didn't hit the result. And, and then you're going to come home burned out, frustrated. Make it about a process.
I think that if you go back to the scripture, at the beginning scripture, it talks about a man's heart devises a way, but the Lord directs his steps. I think sometimes we set out a plan.
I pulled the King James version.
Yeah, I know. It's like deviseth,
in a man's heart
thou shalt.
deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth.
But so let me simplify it. A man's heart decides on a way, but the Lord directs his steps. And that, first of all, takes us being open to allowing the Lord to direct our path. But when I was reminded of this story when you were kind of talking just now of Jonah. The Lord told him to set out to go to Nineveh, but he gets on the scene, he starts going, and the wind comes, trials, things in life, changes, and he ended up in Tarshish. So my point to that is sometimes we have a plan, and maybe it's a God-ordained plan, like the Lord said, hey, but so we're headed in that direction, but God also knows what's going to come along the way as we're headed there, and those things might be part of his ultimate plan to get us to an ultimate place that maybe would have never have gone or believed. Maybe it's like something, I think if someone would have told me in my younger years, I would be where I am today, I would have said, no way, that's not going to, there's no way that's going to happen. And I didn't at least start focused on a small place. I probably would have never focused on being where I am today. So it's like, those are like the God knows our beginning from our end. So he might say, hey, and gives us this plan to be in this direction, knowing that ultimately we're going to end up here in a greater place than we even seen for ourselves. So and depending on how those waves or storms or whatever that is, your path along the way, you end up ultimately, especially if you're allowing the Lord to direct your steps, you end up where you ultimately are supposed to be, but it might not be where you set out to be. Yeah.
Do you have something? So I want to say this about that. And so going back to the scripture, a man's heart, strategizes, devises, right? His way. So basically that's what we do. That's why we get in trouble. It's like we try to figure it out. So here's the thing. God's the author and the finisher. What about the in-between? The in-between is also God's. If he's the author and the finisher, what about the in-between? In the in-between, what happens is we let God author it in our life. I really believe there's people watching right now. I know I fall into this category where your heart is pure when it comes to, you want to do what God's called you to do. You want to be who God's called you to be. But then immediately you take the authoring, once he does it, thanks for the book, God, and you devise a way. And then you expect him to finish it when he's got to go back and correct it. But the Lord directs his steps. So if you think about this, that's where we jack it up. Some people, for instance, you begin a new hobby or anything from working out to running, whatever. Take running for an example. You'll tell yourself immediately, I want to run a 10K or half a marathon by this time next year. You want to set this goal because you think that's what's going to drive me. And I get that. But it's helpful and it could even be good or great, what have you. But I think a better approach is to focus on the identity, right? I want to be someone who, as a normal part of my life, runs. or I'm going to run at least 5 minutes 5 days a week, or I'm going to work out 2 days a week. I'm going to start going to the gym 1 day a week. I'm going to start eating lunch better. And so I think there's no finish line, nothing to really accomplish. It makes it more of a practice or a way of life. And the reality is this, it's funny, and isn't that really the race that counts? Life? Mm-hmm. Because if you look what Paul said at the end of his life, he said, what? He equated everything he did, the failures, the successes. I mean, a lot of rough stuff and a lot of good stuff. All the experiences lumped together. He said what? He said, I have finished the what? The race. I have fought a good fight. So there's a finish line, but it's really the finish line is the finisher, the author and the finisher of my faith. In the beginning, in the between, God directs your steps. If he authored it, it's his idea. If he's going to finish it, how many know that you've tried it and you know as well as I do that only he can do it? So when you get off track, you're like, God, you're like Peter, you're like, save me, Lord, because I'm sinking. So why not just recognize that he directs the steps? Amen. Do we have any comments we could read or anything?
Let me go pull it up. Kevin Campbell said, you're both preaching this morning. I'm assuming there's a fire emoji somewhere coming this way, or was in the pop-ups. Dumasani, amen. Focus on the process, the habits, the results will eventually come. Patrick Christie, what you put in is what you get out. 110%, get out 110%, you get 110%. That's 100% true. It's 110% true. Dumasani, be careful when you say yes. Is it part of God's plan?
Amen. It's good stuff. Anything else?
Just a couple of fire emojis from Elisa out of nowhere.
So, what do you guys think, man? As we get ready to wrap this up, I know this is a lot. Pull back up the scriptures too.
It gives me a little bit of peace because I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. When I started this year, I really was focusing on my health overall. I turned 30 last year, and I was realizing, this is not going to get any easier as I get older. And instead of going, I'm going to lose this much weight, which I have those goals, but they're almost like sub goals. My ultimate goal overall was I want to be much more healthy overall. I didn't start going to the gym to become, I want to, gain a bunch of muscle and I want to look ripped. I did it because I legitimately just wanted to be more healthy overall. And that was my ultimate goal. It's like, I want to be more active and I want to be more fit. Well, those goals don't have an end line. I can't ever hit those. And if I do get to a point where I think I'm hitting the end goal, I can always extend it. There's other things in my mind that can keep that line moving. So it kind of puts me at peace talking about this morning, knowing that when I went into it this year, laying out what this year was going to kind of look like, I feel like I did it the right way versus in the past I've dieted. It was all just for, I just want to lose weight. And I hit that goal. And then literally once I hit that goal, it was like, all right, now what? I'm bored. 4.5 years later, I gained all that weight plus 10 pounds back. So I feel a lot better about it this time around.
Yeah. So I guess the question to say is, are we becoming, and this is what it really comes down to, in everything we do. We've talked about working out, weight gain, weight loss, eating right. We've talked about work. We've talked about, Diana talked about being a mom a little bit early on. She talked about, assuming, because I've been married to her, some of that was about business and where she's at now versus where she was and what she thought could happen as a kid to where she's at now. We talked about everything, all levels. So here's the question. No matter what you do, no matter what part of that appeals to you, are we becoming more like Jesus by the practices and formations that we are doing? So my desire is to be formed and shaped and molded into his image, to be more like him, to look like him, right? To walk at his pace. It's hard because sometimes his pace is too fast for you, but sometimes his pace may seem like it's too slow for you. But it's not. It's perfect. To respond to the world with his gentleness and grace, which is hard. How about this, though? And this is also one I think you're going to like, but to reign and rule, build, create, and cultivate under his loving and sacrificial authority. So it's okay to rule, to build, to reign, to create, to cultivate, because he placed it in you. The desire is given by God, but under his loving and sacrificial authority. But to do that, we have to look in his face. We have to meet with him. We have to stay at his feet. We have to stay humble, spend time with him.
Something that we always a lot of people talk about is always setting a goal in a plan. Okay, set a goal, a plan. So you wake up and go, okay, today I'm going to accomplish this. But I think something that's not talked about, which is really important, this just came to me, is I think not only setting a goal and a plan, but really at the end of the day, evaluating. I think we forget sometimes to evaluate where before you close your eyes at night, what did I hit today? What did I measure up? Because sometimes at the end of my day, I think I really messed up bad there. I woke up with really good intentions to do this, but midday, life hit me and I became a crazy Latin woman. And I had to rein that in. I had to rein that in. So I think, a lot of people always talk about setting goals to hit, but I think another foundational important thing that we forget is evaluating our successes, but also evaluating our pitfalls so that we can start the next day or the next season or the next quarter, whatever that is for you, in strength because we've evaluated what's already happened and what was good and what worked and what didn't work, and then implemented new things to prevent us from falling into those same pitfalls and traps. So not only setting a goal, but evaluating regularly where you're at in that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
And I thought I'm a word picture person, but when you were talking earlier, I thought of a dartboard. We have a target, and our intention is to shoot our target, our dart directly into the bullseye. But the fact of the matter is there's atmospheric things that change where that goes. So it starts out good, but look, a wind comes, and so we end up in, I don't know darts, I don't play darts, but the bottom of the board versus in the bullseye.
I'm horrible at darts. And
I already know what you're going to say.
To end this show, when you're off your game, you're really off, because as a young teenager at my grandparents' house, I had some darts, and I was standing in their carport, and I was throwing them, about 15 feet into the wall, and there was a walkway going out to their backyard, and it was about 10, 15 feet past it, and I was like baseball throwing them, like, winding up and trying to hit the wall. And I was hitting the wall. And then my uncle, who's like an uncle that it was kind of like a black sheep uncle kind of thing. Like he's like there visiting.
Uncle Unworthy.
Uncle Unworthy was back there and standing there, and his back was towards me, but he was like 20 feet away, and he's talking to my grandfather, my grandmother, my dad, and all of that. And I wound up and I threw the dart. It missed the board and stuck him in the back. God. Yeah, all of a sudden, like you just see him from behind. They didn't know what happened because it was a dart. It was like poof right here, like in the kidney area. And he was like,
I think your sister has a story about darts too.
Yeah, he dropped down to his knees, and they were like, "What's he doing? Having a heart attack?" And I hit him in the back with a dart. I got in so much trouble. And then another story with a dart. I was in my workshop, my sister's 4 years younger than me, and I was probably at 12. She was like 9. She had her little Keds on, white Keds. And she was pestering me, and I'm sitting there, and I grabbed the dart, and I went, "Leave me alone, Jamie." And I threw it down on the floor, and it stuck in the top of her foot. And I looked down, and all of a sudden, she looks down, and then blood starts to come out. And I'm like, "Oh my God, please, don't say anything. Don't say anything. She's like, "Ah!"
Moral of the story, don't be around David Villa in a dartboard.
I'm not allowed to have darts.
I was wondering why you didn't have a dartboard in your office.
He has a magnetic one. We used to have a magnetic
There you go.
dartboard. We learned.
I'm bad at those two.
Thank you all for listening today. I will post the song of the day here in just a few minutes. We got to wrap up because we've got another meeting coming up right after this. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8:30. And on that note,
We out.